Thank you for joining us for another installment of the free FM Academy webinars. I am Andrew Davis, a FileMaker developer with Scott Howard Consulting. FM Academy is a consortium of leading FileMaker development companies in the United States. Our purpose is to further educate FileMaker users and developers to encourage best practices and foster further adoption of the FileMaker platform. Today's webinar will be led by Scott Howard, who has been developing FileMaker solutions for 22 years. Scott got started developing in FileMaker to survive computer sales. He was given several hundred customers and needed a way to expedite his quote process. He was an in-house developer for the Alabama iBank and presented his iBank solution at Internet World 2000 with Steve Marchek, then Chief Technology Officer at FileMaker. Scott was a subcontractor with a small company for a number of years and assisted in their famous Design Masterclass. Scott Howard Consulting has grown steadily over the years and is a FileMaker Business Alliance member based in Birmingham, Alabama, serving clients in many industries around the United States. We have solutions for the desktop, mobile, and web that serve single users to enterprise-level companies, such as our District Attorney's Case Management solution. Scott Howard Consulting founded and sponsors the Birmingham FileMaker Developers Group. This presentation will last 30 to 45 minutes, but there will be a question and answer period at the end. Feel free to use the question panel to submit your questions, and we will try to answer as many as possible. And now I'll turn the presentation over to Scott.
Thank you, Andrew. Today we're going to discuss custom functions. It's a very powerful feature that FileMaker added way back in FileMaker 7, but I found in my work with developers that many of them still aren't using custom functions. I hope that today's seminar will inspire some of you who haven't tried them to try them out and to see how powerful a feature they can add to your solutions. In this FM Academy webinar, I plan to focus on beginning to intermediate custom functions. I will take a short dip into one or two more advanced functions, but today's foundational scope will also dictate the questions that we take, although we'll try to take as many as we can, and then we'll answer the rest of them in the blog entry that will follow this presentation. As I think Andrew said, this is being recorded, and the video should be available within about a week. So, FileMaker custom functions, in order to author them, you need to use FileMaker Pro Advanced. Now, they can still be used by users who have FileMaker Pro, FileMaker Go, and the web, but it requires FileMaker Pro Advanced to create, edit, and to import custom functions. Custom functions have inputs and they return a result. When you create a custom function, they're available in the calculation dialog box in the top right corner with a function list, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And you can also import or copy functions from another file, again only if you have FileMaker Pro Advanced. This is the custom function setup, and I'm hoping it's familiar to most of you, but it looks very much like a standard calculation dialog box used in conditional formats, field definitions, script definitions, and here in custom functions, except one of the differences is that instead of the table chooser and the field list, you have the function name chooser and you have the input list. And we're going to skip pretty quickly to the demo because I'd prefer to just show you rather than give you some slides to show you. It's a lot easier for me just to navigate with the real thing. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to FileMaker. And I've made this demo file available, this demo file will be available in a week when we post the blog entry and the video. So custom functions, and this is FileMaker Pro Advanced. You get to them by going to Manage in the File menu and Custom Functions. And you see the list of custom functions that I will be using in today's demonstration. And let me just pick one. Here's full name. This is an old one that came from an old solution of mine, and it's kind of a clunky way of doing this, but it works. So we have up here the name of your function. We have your inputs, which you type in here and you hit the plus button and that will populate it down here. You can move things around so that your functions appear in whatever order you want, and this will dictate how they appear in the function list, which is over here. This is a standard function list just like you see in every calculation engine, And down here you have custom functions, and this shows the same functions that you saw in our custom function list that we got through the file menu. Then lastly, down here is the calculation area where you set up your custom function, and then your operators like a normal calculation dialog. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is just jump right into a couple demonstrations and then walk through starting with some very basic functions and then moving up through intermediate and advanced. I'm using as data just some movies and some directors, and these are, other than Kurosawa, they're very US centric, unfortunately. Sorry for those of you who are joining us from outside the US. One of the things that custom functions are good for is giving you something like an abbreviation of a more complicated calculation that you use over and over. Let's begin by building a very simple custom function. In fact, we'll build the one that you see here, and we'll walk through setting it up so it works with our example. So we open the custom functions list, and you see that we don't have it here, so we click New, and now we name it param, and our only input is num, so we click plus. We can also, if we wanted to, let's say we got that wrong, we can hit edit, which I didn't actually edit it, but if I did number, for instance, I could hit this and it would edit it. I could delete it. I could put num back. If I hit my return key there, it'll add it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pass a number, and we're assuming that this is going to be using a script, and that the script will have a list of values passed to it, and we're wanting one of those return delimited values. So we'll go to our get functions, and actually it's not one of these get functions. I always like finding it by just typing getv, get value, and you see that we need a list of values. So our list is going to be the script parameter. So now we go to our normal get functions, and we look for get script parameter. And there it is. So, and then we place our input. So the inputs are used within the calculations. They carry into the calculation the value that you pass in that input. Okay, so there's our custom function. We save it. There it is in our list. And now we can use it. So I have attached to this button a script, which does nothing now because I hadn't set up my custom function. And so I'm going to, the script is attached to this button, so as soon as I can find the edge of this button, oops, that's my graphic. Okay, I should have probably picked a better button. There we go. Double click on it. I have a perform script. I'm going to pass this field because this field has return delimited data. But let's just say right now, in this a little lesson in parameters, that we're just wanting to pass this. So I would put Coppola, whoops, 2 P's, and Cohen, and Nicole, and Kurosawa. Now, is this going to work? No, it will not, because FileMaker does not see a return character in here. So we can add a return character to explicitly tell it that this is data separated by returns. The problem here is that we'll get a space in here. It'll turn that return that when I pressed return to split these up into a list, it'll interpret it as a space. So this is the way that we might hard code some data, but we're just going to put this value, this data in here, which is our list of directors. So there is our use. We're passing it to a script that sets param, and that's it. And just to real quickly let you see what's happening in the script and how that's being used, actually I haven't set up the calculation. So we're setting the field's results, and now I go here and I want to use my custom function because I've sent to this script these parameters. So I look down here and I find param, and my number is going to be the value field, which I've put in my layout. And then I save it, close it, and then we save our layout to save our button. Okay, so now we're ready to try this. So let's put 2 in there, and when I click this, it should return Cohen. Yay! I put 3 in there, it should return Nicole. 4, Kurosawa. What if I put a 5 in there? It doesn't know what to do with it because there's no data, so it just sends me what I asked for, which was nothing. So there you have it. That is the building of a very basic function, and the value being passed in this custom function is 1, and it's getting the script parameters I passed via the button. It's putting a 1 in there and asking for the first value. As with anything in FileMaker, there are many, many ways to handle the same issue, and the issue is passing a list of values to use in a script. If I have a more complex system or I'm passing more complicated data, there are some great tools out there that use dictionaries so that you can wrap whole blocks of text with offending values, normally offending values, and you can look some of those up online. Some of them, I think Six Fried Rice had a good article years ago, and I believe on Modular FileMaker there's some good stuff. So there's a lot of other ways. Every one of these functions that I've written, most of them that don't have an attribute, I've simplified a little bit. So for those of you who look at this and say, well, there's a much cleaner way of doing this, I agree with you, and we use all of these tools. One of the beauties of custom functions is they're very easy to edit and very easy to copy from solution to solution, and so you can even have multiple versions of a function that you use for different scenarios. My next function is something that I think is fairly common. If you have just a contact database and you have a set of name fields, but you want to populate these, you want to display a full name, maybe in your list view, or maybe in a portal. You don't want to just show title, first, middle, last, suffix, because some of that may not be filled out. You want it to look neater. So I type in my information, and I have Frank Capra, and let's just say he's Mr. Frank Capra. Maybe he's the 3rd or 2nd. And then let's just give him, I think his middle initial is R. And so you have this calculation. Like I said, there are many different ways of approaching the same problem. So this one's a bit of a kludge. It's logical. It basically takes each field title and says, if it's empty, then let's not display anything. If it has something in it, let's display it. Then when you get to the first name, and like I said, I'm kind of exposing myself here. This was something I found in an old solution, and it's not really the way I do it now, but it does work, and it's very practical. As with, again, as you get more and more familiar with building complex calculations, not just custom functions, you'll find ways of refining and different approaches to solving the same problem. And so basically we look at each piece of data to see whether there's something in it, and then we add the right spaces and so forth around it. Now, here's another way, name full, which does the exact same thing, except that we use the list function. The nice thing about the list function is it will give you a list without spaces in between the lines if there's something missing. So if I have a first and last name, when I call the list function, even though I'm telling it to pass in the field title, first name, middle, last, and suffix, it'll only give a list with first name and last name with a return between them. And then I'm wrapping this in a substitute to substitute the return character with a space. And so it's really giving me the exact same result as the previous one with a lot less complexity. Okay, and you see how that works. This next one I would call an intermediate to advanced. This one is one that we wrote a few years ago and have edited over the years, and we use it in solutions where, especially in reporting, where we want the user to choose a date range, but the user may not know what the date range was for, say, last quarter. they'll have to look at a calendar and figure out when last quarter was, or last month even, you know, last year to date. So what we've done is done a it's actually intermediate in that it's longer, but it's really, I would almost call this basic to intermediate because it follows very clear logic. All we're doing is we're making a choice and we're getting a date, start, end, or a date range. Let's say this quarter. And so that's this quarter to date. And so here I have a field that's start date, I have a field called end date, and one called search range, and it builds a search range like FileMaker can use in its finds, and so you can use this in scripts. And fourth quarter this year, looking ahead. And so this function, it might be easier for me just to open up the function for date range, show the whole thing to you. And so all I really do is a big case statement, and it just says if range, and I'm using a let variable for today, if range equals today, then let's show today. If range equals yesterday, show today minus 1, and so forth, this week, this month, and so forth. So it's really not very complicated logic. I'm also, in this particular function, I'm returning a start and end date as a return delimited list, which I then, within my calculation, either my script or my field definition, I pull the first or the second value. The first value being the start date, second value being the end date. And I can show you here in field definitions that it's simply, I'm actually using the date range to get the value, and since I've got two values, I want the first one because this is the field called start date. And over here in the search one, I do the same thing, but I add the little ellipsis between my start and my end dates to get a FileMaker style search range. Okay. Next one is one that we use a lot called AddRemove, and it's simply, I'm going to have these little buttons I've added to just pre-populate my field. Let's say I have a set of movies. Looks like a space got in here, and I pass a value to a list, to the function, and I pass a list to the function. And if I put something in here like, let's say in time, and I press this button, if in time is in the list, it removes it. And let's just put Wally. And if it's not in there, it adds it. This is something that we use all the time, especially we use it when passing parameters. We use it when using global variables, lists of things. It's especially useful on shorter lists. It would work on longer ones, but we tend to use it on things that we pass, like in parameters. This is the list. I got this, I believe, from Brian Dunning's site, which I'll give you the link to. And this is by David Head, and if you're out there, I'm sorry I didn't ask permission. I think because it was up on Brian Dunning's site, I'm assuming this stuff is in the public domain. And these are great. This is a great function that's very useful. DataType. This is Matt Navarre's. Okay, now this is I find this useful. Matt, when he sent this to me, a revised version of this week, mentioned that he doesn't use this very often. It's used in FM search results by seed code to discern the type of data passed to the function. I use this a lot when I have a long list view of data that I'm doing a search, especially like a type ahead search. So I have my search bar up top, and as I'm typing, the trigger is grabbing the search criteria, and it's first discerning what type of data it is, because I want to be very efficient. I don't want it to search across a large data set of people, for instance. Let's say my list view has a name, maybe an admissions date for a student, and maybe their email address. So I want to see whether I need to search in the name or the date or the email. Well, this does just that. It takes a piece of data, and I've already got these little pre-filled, and it knows that that's a date. I have a search range. It knows it's a date range, so it knows FileMaker knows how to handle that. It knows this is an email, a number, or integer. It also handles large integers. Whoops. Get that out of there. Large integer. I've found this helpful when discerning large dollar values, social security numbers that you strip of the dashes, things like that. I believe this function, I noticed he did have social security number in it. Company name, again, it sees that as text. Phone number. So this can be really helpful in display calcs, in searches and so forth. This function is a little bit longer. I'd probably actually call this more advanced. And he's basically filtering out information, seeing what's left, so that he can discern what type of information is here. Like, if you see the @ symbol, then you know that it's probably an email if it fits certain criteria. If you filter out all non-numeric characters, and what you have left is the same as your original, then you can pretty much be assured it's an integer. And then by the length, it could be a short or a long, or normal and a long integer. So very, very helpful function. Okay, this is an interesting function. Jeff Drake, who is the in-house FileMaker developer with HealthSouth, the hospital group, he had a client years ago who needed to print checks from FileMaker. So he wanted a way to write out the number in words. Now there are functions like this out there on the custom function sites. Jeff wanted to go a step further, and he wanted to be able to handle really long numbers. In fact, just about as much number as FileMaker can take in a field. So let me see if I can get my typing working, and I've got all these big long numbers. Watch this. How do you like that? An octodecillion, 2 octodecillions, 485 septodecillions, and so forth. I believe that this goes up to 10 to the 303rd, which Jeff tells me is a centillion. So that's a pretty big number. Let me get back to a normal, smaller number. Well, it's not too small. And a decimal. And he handles negatives. Negative 1,234 and 34 hundredths. So really cool function. He showed this to me at our developer group meeting last week, and I begged him for the chance to show it today. And one of the things I wanted to show about this, and this is one of the nice features of custom functions, is that a custom function can call other custom functions. So here's his function. This is the main function that it calls, but it's dependent on 2 other functions, number to words and number to word suffix. And if you look over here, you see these 2 functions. So each of those functions handles a different part of this calculation. And what that does is, just like scripts, where we often will break long scripts down into multiple scripts, subscripts, that will call to do maybe one discrete function. It makes it a lot easier to read. It allows the parts to be reused by other functions, and so forth. So I also wanted to highlight here a nice practice. Just like scripting, good scripting involves good commenting. Albert Haram Alvarez used to tell us when we would code, he said, code as if the next developer after you is an ex-con with anger issues and he has your address. So we apply that same logic to custom functions. Put something in here. I always like to put the year it was created, the last time it was modified, any dependencies that this function has, so if somebody were to import or copy this into their own solution, they could see right here that, oh, well, I need to copy these functions in as well. And there are a number of really powerful functions out there that do rely on some of these other functions to operate. So, and here's also some commenting that Jeff puts in here. So he breaks it down to help us understand what's going on. Account for 0 values, account for negative numbers, account for integer portion of the number, and so forth. It just makes it a lot easier, one, not only for developers following up, but also for yourself who revisit it after a few years. This is in place, it's been working great, and your client has a new need. You need to revisit your function, and all of a sudden you're digging through obscure code with no commenting and trying to figure out what the heck you tried to do 3 years ago. I think all of us have been there. Okay, here is a function that would be, I at first had this in the beginning because I forgot that this was a particular type of function. This is a function that we use a lot to just clean text from before and after a value that's either in a field or that's passed in a parameter or used in the calculations. You know, users can't always be counted on to enter everything perfectly, and we regularly run across spaces after text, return characters after text, and if you're using this for you have a calculation that displays a bunch of data in a list view, and all of a sudden you can't see a piece of data because there's a return character, then you might want to use a function like this. Now, FileMaker has given us the trim function, which is very powerful. This just takes it a little bit further and uses and trims some characters that FileMaker's function doesn't handle. You can't really see it in FileMaker, but there's some return characters, some tab characters, and some other characters that show up as invisible. And so when I hit this button, here's my nice clean text. As you can see, there's nothing before it and after it, and so now I can pass this to my display calc and not worry about offending characters that users enter. This is really not that difficult, but the reason I put this in the advanced is because it uses something that is one of the great strengths of custom functions, and it is an advanced method, and it's recursive functions. A recursive function is a function that calls itself within itself. So you see here that it's calling itself. Now, I'm not going to go into recursive functions right here. One, they're kind of abstract and they take a little bit to get your head around, and it's not really the scope of this webinar to cover this advanced function. But FileMaker, there are two different ways you can create recursive functions. One type allows you to call the function, for a function to call itself 50,000 times, and then one that allows you to call it 10,000 times. You have standard recursion and tail recursion. Google those and you will find some wonderful articles and some great articles on how to write your own custom functions. Susan Prosser's book from O'Reilly, I believe it is, has a very good description on how to write a recursive function. It's one of the better articles I've found on helping you just to think through this. I always end up, I don't write these a lot, so I often have to go back and remember what the steps are to make sure it's working right. So anyway, so this is a call that simply within it gathers information, tests for a conditional. If there's data, then it calls itself, and then it just iterates until it's finished its task, which this task is to just go through there and to look for these values and then remove them. And so this works very quick with this in this kind of scenario. So that is one of the things called a recursive function. All right, my last one is in advanced because what I'm doing here, and this is one of the great uses of custom functions, is to take something that would normally be complicated that you want to use over and over again and make it just easier to call or put it into one function. So here in my database, if I were to show you my data, it's just a simple database of movies. And I just took a bunch of some of my favorite movies and some of my favorite directors and linked them together with a join table to give the role director Joel Cohen, True Grit. And if I enter a movie, so let's just put in True Grit, we're using a SQL command. You can see the execute SQL here to get the director. And actually, you know what? Let me back up. I actually meant to show one more feature with this one, so sorry about that. Custom functions can be copied from other solutions, but they also can be imported. And I'm going to import this one and then set this up. So let's say we're going to import, and I have my custom functions vault, which is really just the same one file, except with get director. And I'm going to import that. My summary, just like a normal import, says it completed it, it was successful, there were no conflicts and no errors, there's a log file if there were errors. It does remind us, and this is very important, when you import or copy a function from another solution, always check it, because it may have some calls to other functions or fields that are now broken because those other fields or functions are not in your solution. So always check that. So we'll open it up. Look here, and Andrew, who introduced this webinar, nicely commented it, and he also wrote it in such a way that it doesn't rely on any fields in my solution. It just relies on the one input, the name of the movie, and it then queries, well, it actually does rely on it. It relies on me having these tables here. So if I had maybe renamed the crew table to directors, then this would have broken, and we would have gotten a question mark. So now that it's in there, I'm going to go into layout mode, and this is just a step, just a simple, whoops. I can get my button there. Well, there we go. And I'm going to make sure the function is missing. I had used it before and I deleted it. So I'm going to go down to my custom functions, and I see my great get director function. And I'm going to look for my get director data field right there. And now my button is ready to use. I'm going to save. Go back to my thing. Don't you wish FileMaker would fix that? When you go out to layout mode, it would be in the same tab or slide control. So I click that, and here is my movie, True Grit, filmed in 2010 and directed by Joel Cohen. Let's put another one in there. The Godfather. Great. 1972, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. So there you have what I would call an advanced function because it's using the execute SQL. But one of the really nice things is in this day, I actually, as one of my hobbies, I teach a beginning filmmaking course to a group of high schoolers. This weekend we did 2 days of shooting, and so this could be a database that I would use to look up references for movies. And let's say I'm not all up on execute SQL, so I call a friend of mine, I call Andrew in, who's really good with SQL, and I ask him to write a query for me to do this function and put it into a custom function, and I import it into this solution, and now it's usable by me all over. One of the things I wanted to show you before we go to the question and answer period is in custom functions, there's also, something in the setup. Let me go to the director. And to be honest with you, this has been in FileMaker a long time, but I actually hardly ever use it and had forgotten about it. And this is the ability to hide the function from the calculation section of the function section of the calculation dialog from any user who doesn't have a full access privilege. And you might ask, what use is this? Because the person would have to have access to the calculation engine either through scripts or custom functions. The custom functions, the field definitions, or layouts with conditional formatting. And that's true, but you may have a solution where you have a user who's fairly familiar with FileMaker, and they have a layout you've given them to, maybe they have a report or a list view where they want to be able to show different things on it. So through your privilege set, you create a new privilege set where you define that layout for them to tweak and play with. So, and they want to do some conditional formatting or something. That's just one scenario that I thought up as I was thinking through this. And so they're not a full access person. You don't really want them to use this function because they're never going to have to look up directors and so forth. And so you want to hide this, only accounts assigned full access privileges. So that person will be able to get all the other standard FileMaker functions and any custom functions that are given to us that are in this file, except for the ones that are marked only accounts assigned to full access privileges. Okay, we are about 35 minutes in, and I've run to the end of my custom functions. So let me just do a quick review. This is something that I said I would cover very quickly. In 2012 at DEF CON, Todd Geist sparked a debate in one of his seminars where he made the comment that he prefers to use scripts over custom functions when possible. And that started a debate online with a lot of different developers wondering why this is. And I kind of had Tim Enlow, one of our developers, take a look at some of these articles, and I read a couple of them, and it kind of boils down to these 2 points. One, custom functions require FileMaker Pro Advanced to author. The answer to that would be that most developers are already using FileMaker Pro Advanced anyway, and if you're not using FileMaker Pro Advanced and you're developing, you really need to. If you're an in-house developer and your company doesn't want to spend the money, have them send you to DevCon, because you get a free copy. That's a $550 piece of software. It has tools that I don't know how you could live without as a developer. So in a way, it is a valid point, but it's in a way a moot point, because hopefully most of us developers are using FileMaker Pro Advanced. Another one is that it introduces dependencies that can break. For instance, if in a script like the one I showed you, where Andrew's execute SQL statement called a table by name, if somebody were to change that table name, it would break. So there's a dependency that it breaks. Also, if a custom function doesn't get copied over to a solution, or a user, or one of your junior developers actually accidentally deletes it, then you got a problem. You've got a broken dependency there. Again, the issue there is that scripts have the same issue. They may reference subscripts that get deleted or changed. They may also have fields fields also have dependencies that can break. So it's just a matter of learning how to program well. I think one advantage custom functions have is that they explicitly accept multiple named inputs, so it's easier to see what you're passing. Whereas scripts can also, as I showed in our param function, they can accept multiple inputs, but it's not native to it. You have to kind of put it in there between quotes and put a delimiter like a tab or some other thing that you clean up later. So scripts, it doesn't do it natively, and it's not obvious. Another thing is that looping is much easier in scripts than it is when you use recursive functions, and I will give you that. That is absolutely true. It's a whole lot easier to think, at least I find it so, to think through looping scripts where you're going over the same data or the same process over and over than it is to write a recursive function. So in that area, I think custom functions for that use is a lot more difficult. You know, the real thing comes down to the right tool for the job. There are times when custom functions are just very easy. It's a reusable calculation, like I showed you with the full name calculation, or the execute SQL, or the DataType. You've got something very complicated. You're going to call it over and over and throughout your solution, and it's easy just to summarize it, to give yourself a nice abbreviated version of that in a custom function. So in review, you need FileMaker Pro Advanced to author and edit custom functions. Custom functions that are added to a file are available for use by any user, whether they're on Pro, Go, or via WebDirect, as long as the functions you're using are accessible in those platforms. They can make very complicated calculations easy, both easy to reference and use and easy to read. They're reusable throughout your file. They must reside within the file in which they're referenced, but you can copy them between files. You can call custom functions. Custom functions can call other functions, and custom functions can call themselves or as a recursive function. So these are just some of the, this is kind of a broad thing, but I think I've dipped into most aspects of custom functions, and I hope that that was helpful. I want to give you a couple resources. I'm going to switch to my browser to show you these. First of all, let me show you the one that's been around for a long time. Brian Dunning did the FileMaker service. The community a great service when he created this custom function repository. It's been up for years. It has a lot of great stuff, like if you want to calculate age, which is a particularly difficult thing, you can go here and find somebody's age function. You can copy this and use it freely in your solutions. Let me mention one thing that I do whenever I copy a solution like this, because you'll have to construct this within your file. You can't just copy it from here as a custom function. Is when you copy this in there, I always copy the attribution as well, and then I'll put it in, I'll comment it out so that I know, one, where I got it, and two, if anyone else is coding behind me, they know where this came from. I've also properly given credit to the developer for his or her hard work. We have another one that's newer. It's called FM functions or FileMaker custom functions. Very much the same. Let's see, I think it has some age. In fact, it has an age function. I think this is it. No, it's not this one. There's one that, this is a nice one too. And it handles, as you can see, you have a lot of issues with age because you have leap years, and you have, some people display things like they type out the age, like 3 years and 4 months old. So you can find these here at fmfunctions.com. Another resource that I mentioned is FileMaker Developer Conference. It's coming up, and you get a free copy of FileMaker Pro Advanced, $5.99, so that product that you get for free. And then this webinar will be hosted within a week, the video and the sample file, and so you'll be able to see the blog entry with also the questions that we weren't able to get to. So, also a lot of FileMaker forums, FileMaker's help section on FileMaker.com is very helpful, and the in-app help that FileMaker gives us is also helpful. So, let's take some questions, and Andrew's been watching these questions come through, so we're going to try to answer as many as we can in the time that we've got left, which we actually have about 20 minutes, so this is good. Okay, if you convert a FP7, a FileMaker pre-12 solution to an FMP12, will the custom function be migrated to the new file? Yes, they will. Once the file is converted by FileMaker 12 or 13, all the custom functions are automatically moved over, and FileMaker Pro converts the function, but you have to have Pro Advanced to edit them after the conversion. Can custom functions be integrated with a web viewer? They can be used in the calculation dialog of a web viewer. A good example would be, for instance, if you wanted to store HTML data in a custom function and then show that HTML data in a web viewer. So yes, you can in some circumstances. Is there a way to store a custom function in the application at the application level so it is available whenever creating a new solution? No, but we actually store a lot of our common functions in a single file. We'll have a, in fact, this was not my normal one, but I just created this custom function vault, which just has the functions that were used in this demo and the one that I imported. But a lot of developers will have a resource file that they make, maybe even host on their server so they can access it, or multiple developers can access it, that allows them to import it or copy it from that file to their solutions. So is it possible to pass a list into a custom function? Yes. And I'm going to show you that because it was one of our examples. And it is the AddRemove. The list, when you pass it to the function, has to have the pilcrow or the return character in between it, and it has to be in quotes. So it can't just be a list like this. When you pass it, the FileMaker will just put a space in between it, I believe. So it has to be in the right format. So this will be interpreted as a return delimited list. So you can do this. One of the issues when returning return delimited list is you may have, like let's say you want to pass one of your fields has return characters in it. If you do it using this very simple method, those will actually get interpreted as another line and can mess up what you're trying to do here. If there are other solutions out there, look for like a dictionary method is what some people have used, and that is a way of enclosing the data you're passing to encode it, basically kind of go through it and remove any potentially offending characters, replace those characters with something that will pass through, and then on the other end, when your function or your script is using that data, it will then decode it. It will then take that group of data in that one line, and it will put those things back so it can be used, displayed, and so forth. I hope that's not too complicated. But the short answer, yes, you can pass a list. The long answer is you have to be careful because the data that you pass in those list items may look to FileMaker like a second line. Yes, can I show how to copy a custom function from one to another? can show that. Let's see, I have everything in here. I'll tell you what, I'm going to delete one of the ones I didn't use, SoundX. It's a nice function. I wanted to show this one, Greg Lang with skeleton keys, suggested this one, and I just didn't get time to put it in the file. It gives real-world error codes for SQL troubleshooting. And I'm going to go over to my desktop, and I'm going to open my custom function vault, which is just my demo file. And I want to put that. I'm going to copy that SoundX file. So I look for it. I do SoundX, normal copy and paste. You see my copy is available. Cancel out of that. I go back over to my solution. Now you have to have FileMaker Pro Advanced in order to do this. Just remember that. Just like any editing or authoring of custom functions. And then you just tap inside this area and then go to Edit and Paste. Bam, there's my SoundX function. Everything's all there, and it's now ready for use. Is it possible to read a text file into a custom function? You can't pass a file into a function, but I guess I'd have to know. The question I would ask in that case, I would ask the client or user, what are you wanting to do with this? Like for a solution, for instance, we did for an executive recruiting firm, they wanted to scrape PDF files and Word documents for keywords, and so we used the 360 Worth Scribe plugin to, and I think there are other plugins that do this, to extract the information from those files and then bring it into a function where it actually had a list of keywords that we defined in a pref area, and the function basically would show whether these would gather the keywords that it found or phrases within this document. So what we're really doing is we're just passing in text that is a plugin pulled from a file. So I guess in that way it's possible, but just the kind of file that you would pull from a container field, you can't pass it. Let's see, I'm looking for other questions as they come in. I will say another thing that I have done before is I use Evernote. It's great. I hope all of y'all are using Evernote. It's a free service that lets you type notes and clip websites and stuff. And I'll oftentimes put my custom functions in there because I have access to it anywhere. I may be, granted, I'll have my computer if I'm coding at a client's, but if I'm somewhere and maybe don't have my computer, or I can't find a function that I don't have in a solution that's accessible to me, some of the more often used ones, I'll just basically copy the text from the custom function setup. And here's one I didn't use also. And I'll just copy the name, I'll copy any parameters, and I'll copy the actual calc, and I'll just keep it stored in Evernote. That way it's very easy to search through. So you can, and then if I got to that client and I thought of this function, I wanted to use it, I could pull up Evernote and just copy and paste to create the custom function very quickly. One question here. Yes, the question is, are you going to post the functions that you've shown today to the blog post on FM Academy, FileMakerAcademy.com? Yes, we will. In about a week, we'll process the video and we'll upload that. I'll do some cleanup on this custom function demo file and just send it. It'll be available for download, so you can use all of these custom functions. And you're always free to email me if you have questions. Also, if you have any other questions, continue to upload these, and we'll try to answer them. Looks like we've handled most of the questions. So if you'll have any other questions, I guess we'll switch back to the presentation, and we will plug the next FM Academy webinar. The FM Academy webinars are free. They cover a wide range of topics. I think a lot of you are familiar with the famous 12 that came out after 12 came out. Really helped us get deep into this new file format that FileMaker gave us and all these new features. So normally they're held the third Tuesday of each month. Check FileMakerAcademy.com's website to see what's coming in April. And also you can sign up to receive the notices of these meetings there. Just to remind you, FileMaker Academy is a consortium of top FileMaker development firms that came together to create educational materials that would help the FileMaker community, and this is the list of current members of FM Academy. Just a little plug out, I started developing about 22 years ago, and one of the things that really impressed me with the FileMaker community was how giving people were, not just at DEF CON, where people are walking around and very willing, but also just, you email somebody who's written an article or written a book, and I almost never, I don't think I can think of a time when somebody wasn't willing to give me the answer to the question or to spend some time. And then some of those led to me paying for time with the people sometime, and by doing that I learned, and then this FM Academy is just one more extension of that, of this community. It's a great community. I highly encourage you all to go to FileMaker Developer Conference. It's probably one of the best resources for just taking in a ton of information quickly, and the networking is one of the most valuable parts of Developer Conference. One of the early sign-up periods is at the end of the month, so you get about $300 off if you sign up by the end of the month. I believe also that if you sign up by the end of the month, they're going to give you the recordings of last year's DEF CON. If you sign up afterwards, there's another early one in mid-May, and then there's the full price after that. And so I'd encourage you all to check out FileMaker.com, look at the DEF CON webpage, and I highly encourage you all to go to that. It's a very good investment of your time. So if there are no other questions, then we will cut this short. Usually we go about an hour, but I thank you for your time. I hope it was instructional, and I look forward to continuing the conversation about FileMaker. Take care.